And one more thing. The next whore I catch in your bed, I'll hang.
There's a line Tywin Lannister delivers at the end of his conversation with Tyrion that most people remember as a threat. He says, "The next whore I catch in your bed, I'll hang," and it lands like a hammer. Tywin's voice drops. Tyrion goes still. The scene ends. But here's what nobody thinks about until much, much later. 2 seasons after this conversation, Tyrion walks into the Tower of the Hand, the same tower where Tywin lives, the same tower where this scene takes place, and finds Shae in his father's bed. Not Tyrion's bed, Tywin's bed. The man who threatened to hang whores was sleeping with one. The man who accused his son of turning Casterly Rock into a whorehouse had turned the Tower of the Hand into one. And the man who said he couldn't prove Tyrion was his son spent the entire scene accidentally proving that Tyrion is exactly like him, because every single accusation Tywin makes in this room is a confession about himself. Now, let's back up. This is the 3rd season premiere. Tyrion has just survived the Battle of the Blackwater. Barely. He organized the defense of King's Landing. He designed the wildfire trap that destroyed Stannis' fleet. He led the sortie through the tunnels when no one else would, and his reward is a scar across his face, a cramped room in a corner of the Red Keep, and the knowledge that his father took all the credit. So Tyrion does something he's never done before. He goes to Tywin and asks for what he's owed.
I am your son, lawful heir.
You want Casterly Rock?
It is mine, by right.
I mean, the way Tyrion builds his case is fascinating. Technically, it's legally airtight. Jaime is Kingsguard, sworn to serve for life, forbidden from marriage or inheritance. The day Jaime put on the white cloak, he forfeited his claim. Cersei, as a woman, inherits after her brothers, which means Tyrion is the lawful heir. It's not a request. It's a statement of fact backed by every law in the 7 kingdoms. And Tywin knows it. You can see it in his face, the slight tightening around the jaw, the pause before he responds. Tyrion is right, and being right makes it worse. Well, before we get to Tywin's rejection, pay attention to what Tyrion asks for first.
I organized the defense of this city. As my reward, trundled off to some doctor to sell.
He doesn't open with Casterly Rock. He opens by asking for something much simpler, acknowledgement. He tells his father that he saved the city, that he organized the defense, that he nearly died doing it, and all he wants before the castle, before the inheritance, before any of it, is for his father to say good job, to recognize just once that Tyrion did something worthy of the Lannister name. And Tywin's response tells you everything. He says,
Jugglers and singers require applause. You are a Lannister.
That line sounds like strength. It sounds like a man who is above petty praise, who does his duty without needing a pat on the back. But think about who Tywin actually is. This is a man whose destruction of House Rain was so total that a song was written about it, the Rains of Castamere, specifically so the entire realm would never forget what happens when you cross a Lannister. This is a man who presented the bodies of Elia Martell's children to Robert Baratheon wrapped in Lannister cloaks, not because it was necessary, but because he wanted credit for the loyalty. This is a man who walks into every room with the golden hand of the king pin displayed like a medal. Tywin doesn't need applause. Tywin's entire career is a performance designed to generate fear, which is just applause for tyrants. He denied Tyrion the one thing he himself had demanded from the entire world his whole life. So then, Tyrion makes his real move. He wants Casterly Rock, and this is where the scene becomes something the fandom doesn't talk about enough, because Tywin's rejection isn't political, it's personal, and every word of it is a mirror. The thing is, Tywin says he would let himself be consumed by maggots before making Tyrion heir to Casterly Rock. Then he stands up, walks toward Tyrion, towers over him physically, deliberately, and delivers the speech.
You are an ill-made, spiteful little creature.
He calls Tyrion an ill-made, spiteful little creature full of envy, lust, and low cunning. He says the laws of men give Tyrion the right to bear his name and display his colors, since he cannot prove that Tyrion is not his. and the gods have condemned Tywin to watch Tyrion waddle about wearing the proud lion that was his father's sigil and his father's before him. Neither gods nor men will compel him to let Tyrion turn Casterly Rock into his whorehouse. Again, read that speech again, slowly, because every single accusation describes Tywin more accurately than it describes Tyrion. Envy. Tywin calls Tyrion envious. But Tywin is the man who spent his entire life watching houses like the Starks earn loyalty through love, while he could only earn it through fear. He watched Robert and Ned's friendship, two men who would die for each other out of genuine affection, and he had nothing like it. His own children feared him. His bannermen obeyed him. Nobody loved him. And the deepest envy of all, Tyrion. The son Tywin hates most is the one who inherited his mind, and Tywin can't stand it because Tyrion got the one thing Tywin values above everything and wears it in a body Tywin finds humiliating. That's not contempt. That's envy dressed up as disgust. Lust. Tywin calls Tyrion lustful. Tywin, who threatened to hang whores. Tywin, who sits on his privy in the Tower of the Hand while Shae is in his bed wearing a gold necklace. The show never confirms exactly how long Tywin and Shae were together, but the implication is devastating. The man who publicly shamed his son for loving a woman beneath his station was privately doing the exact same thing behind closed doors. And worse, in the books, the tunnel Tyrion uses to reach Tywin's chambers runs from the Hand's bedchamber directly to a brothel, a secret passage built for exactly the kind of visits Tywin publicly despises. The hypocrisy isn't a side note, it's the entire foundation of Tywin's character. Low cunning. Tywin calls Tyrion cunning, as if it's an insult, but Tyrion's cunning is what saved King's Landing. Tyrion's cunning is what held Joffrey's court together while Tywin was off fighting a war. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. Tyrion's cunning is the most Lannister trait he has. It's the trait Tywin values above all others in himself. Tyrion is the child who inherited Tywin's mind, and Tywin punishes him for it because it comes in a package he finds humiliating. Look, this is the central tragedy of the entire Lannister family, concentrated into one scene. Tywin has 3 children. Jaime, the golden son, beautiful and brave, who doesn't want Casterly Rock, doesn't want to lead, and threw away his inheritance to be a glorified bodyguard. Cersei, the daughter who desperately wants to be Tywin, who mirrors his ruthlessness but lacks his strategic patience, and whose every attempt to play the game ends in disaster. And Tyrion, the dwarf, the one Tywin despises most, the one who is, by every objective measure, the most like his father, the best political mind, the most effective administrator, the man who actually saved the family's seat of power while Tywin was still marching through the Riverlands. Actually, there's a detail in Tywin's speech that the fandom has been debating for years. He says,
"Since I cannot prove that you are not mine."
Not since you are my son, not because you carry my blood, since I cannot prove you are not mine. He's telling Tyrion to his face that he wishes he could disown him, but the evidence won't cooperate. And the irony, the cruel, enormous irony, is that Tyrion's resemblance to Tywin is the evidence, not physical resemblance, psychological resemblance. Tyrion thinks like Tywin, he schemes like Tywin, he sees people like Tywin. The one child Tywin can't claim isn't his, is the one who is most unmistakably his. And yet, the scene doesn't end with the rejection. It ends with the threat. The next whore I catch in your bed, I'll hang, right? And that line, which sounds like a warning about Tyrion's behavior, is actually the fuse that leads to the explosion that destroys House Lannister. Basically, follow the chain. Tywin threatens Tyrion about whores. Tyrion hides Shae more carefully. Cersei's spy eventually discovers Shae. Shae is brought to Tyrion's trial as a witness. She testifies against him, calls him a monster, repeats their most intimate moments as evidence. Tyrion, shattered, demands a trial by combat. Oberyn dies. Tyrion is sentenced to death. Jaime frees him. And Tyrion, on his way out, makes a detour to the Tower of the Hand. He finds Shae in Tywin's bed. He strangles her with the gold necklace she's wearing. Then he picks up Joffrey's crossbow, walks to the Privy, and puts 2 bolts through his father. You see, every piece of that sequence begins in this room, in this scene, with a man who told his son that whores were beneath a Lannister while keeping one in his own bed, with a man who said Tyrion was too lustful and cunning and spiteful to inherit the family legacy, and whose own lust, cunning, and spite created the exact conditions for his own murder. Tywin didn't die because Tyrion was ungrateful. Tywin died because he was a hypocrite, and the crossbow bolt through his chest was delivered by the son he spent a lifetime telling wasn't good enough to be a Lannister. The son who, in the cruelest twist of all, turned out to be the most Lannister of them all. The thing is, the final line Tyrion says to Tywin on the Privy, right before he pulls the trigger, is about the word whore. Tywin calls Shae a whore one more time, and Tyrion tells him, say that word again. Tywin, who has never backed down from anyone in his life, who outlasted the Mad King and destroyed Robb Stark and crushed every enemy the realm could throw at him, Tywin says it again, because he genuinely cannot imagine that his son, the creature he despises, would pull the trigger. And Tyrion does. The man who couldn't prove Tyrion was his son dies because he refused to believe Tyrion was capable of being one. You know, every video about this scene focuses on what it does to Tyrion, how it breaks him, how it sets up his journey to Essos and eventually to Daenerys. And that's valid. But what nobody talks about is what this scene reveals about Tywin. Because this isn't a father disciplining a son. This is a man looking into a mirror and smashing it because he can't stand the reflection. Every accusation is a confession. Every insult is a self-portrait. And every threat is a prophecy. Not about what will happen to Tyrion, but about what will happen to Tywin. So the next time you watch this scene, Tywin looming over Tyrion, the firelight on his face, that voice dropping to a whisper as he says the next whore I catch in your bed, remember what you're actually hearing. You're hearing a man describe himself. He just doesn't know it yet. And the son he's threatening is the one who will eventually make him pay for every word.